The draft, a very interesting concept and one I do actually really like as a sports fan. Not something that we have in any of our sports in England, but it's very familiar to you guys in America. So today we're looking at second round draft picks that became superstars. Obviously, normally most of the conversation goes to the number 1 pick, the number 2, number 3, blah, blah, blah. Let's have a look at some of the number 2 ones, which turned out to be fantastic discoveries from the scouts. Let's dive straight into this. It's a video by Nonstop. Video link will be down in the description. Let's go.
Ability of drafting an all-star with the first pick is 65%. The chances of drafting an NBA all-star in the second round,
I'm going to guess 4%.
are close to 0.
Oh.
Because in the last 40 years, only 26 players drafted in the second round made at least one all-star.
Hey, you still got a
team.
shot.
But that's still 26 times a GM hits a home run and finds a diamond in the rough. These are the second round draft picks who
Shine
became
bright like a
NBA
diamond.
superstars.
I was like Dennis the Menace. I was a prankster, and I was a jokester.
Gilbert Arenas is an immature prankster, and he's been that way
He played in LA, right?
his whole life. In college, he partied all the time, he carried guns, he drove around campus blasting sounds from porno movies on max volume.
Sounds like a
But
troublemaker.
He was also the best player on a team that went to the NCAA Finals, and Arenas believed he would be a top 10 pick. By sheer talent alone, Gilbert was supposed to be a top 5 pick.
Maybe he didn't
in a
play in
draft
LA.
that also had Pau Gasol, Tony Parker,
Ooh.
Zach Randolph, and
Oh.
Joe Johnson.
Oh.
But what Arenas had
Nice
in
little
terms
draft
of
class.
talent, he had more than double in immaturity.
Played for the Wizards.
See, during that draft's combine, Gil refused to do an 8-minute cardio drill to measure his heart rate. And for the stupidest possible reason. The guy didn't want to mess up his brand new sneakers on the treadmill. And when the NBA representatives asked him what his main goal was in the NBA, Gil simply answered that he wanted to be a pimp. They gave him another chance to answer that same question and say something smarter, but Gil doubled down. I want to be an international pimp. Totally
My man was getting no advice from anyone back in those days.
oblivious that his stupidity and his childish behavior might throw off some teams, Gil still believed that he was going to be selected in the top 10 and become a millionaire. And so, before the draft, Arenas bought a custom-built Escalade with suede
Okay.
leather on the inside, 5 TVs, jewelry, clothes, and he partied like a superstar. But much to his surprise, he wasn't selected as high as he hoped. Arenas got selected with the second pick of the second round and 31st overall.
With the 31st
Still not
pick
bad,
in
right?
the 2001 NBA Draft, the Golden State Warriors select Gilbert Arenas from the University of Arizona.
His rookie salary was only $400,000 after taxes, which
Only $400,000. Poor guy. I mean, let's all just let's spare a moment for him. Shed a tear for him. Only $400,000. How
don't
did he
get me wrong, is
survive?
a nice chunk of money, but it's not the millions Gil envisioned. Turns out that Arenas had
It's enough for
actually
5
spent
TVs.
his entire rookie salary before the draft. And so he was left with $500 a month to live.
Yo.
And because of that, he couldn't even afford gas money. So Gil had to sleep in the arena. But it turns out that that's ultimately the best thing that could have happened to him. Because since he was already in the arena and he had no money to spend, Arenas worked on his game all the time. And in his second season, he won the Most Improved Player Award and became one of the best scorers of his generation until injuries took their toll. Still, his career scoring average is over 20 points per game, which ranks among the 75 best of all time. And yeah,
I don't know why I thought he played in LA. The question I was going to ask, the reason I paused, is the Most Improved Player Award. This used to be an award that we used to give in our football teams, like in your Saturday League, Sunday League football team, and no one wanted to win that award because there was like a stigma around it. It meant you were very bad, and now you're just all right. That's kind of what that award used to mean. I'm guessing it's a bit more prestigious than the NBA, though. If you win
while
it
it's a little
at the
weird
NBA
that
level.
someone as talented as Gilbert dropped to the second round, it was completely obvious why it happened to Isaiah Thomas.
I was the
Small.
last pick of the whole draft.
Of the whole draft?
Small
the
dude.
last one, 60th pick.
Isaiah grew up to only be 5'9", and he was always the smallest guy on every court. His family
I love
actually
watching
tried
him
to
play.
convince him to quit basketball and at least have a plan B. But for Isaiah, playing basketball was always going to be plan A, and there was no plan B. And finally, after a successful 3-year college career, Thomas's lifelong NBA dream finally came true. In the 2011 NBA Draft, he was selected 60th overall with the final pick of the draft.
2011 NBA Draft, the Sacramento Kings select Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, being picked last isn't very flattering.
I find it weird that there's only 2 rounds in the NBA draft. It seems like there should be a 3rd round, maybe. I don't know. The NFL has like 5 rounds, right? I know the squads or the rosters, as you guys would say, are much bigger, but still, 2 rounds is 60 people a year is not that many.
But that didn't matter to Thomas, as long as he was in the league. But it's one thing to get drafted, and a whole other thing to stay in the NBA, as many second-round picks fizzle out of the league after only 2 seasons. However, basketball-crazed Thomas was too talented and too relentless. By the end of his rookie year, he was starting for the Kings, and in his 3rd season, he was averaging 20 points per game. After a short stint in Phoenix, he was traded to Boston.
Big up
where he
Boston.
won the hearts of the fans and put his name in the record books. In the 2016 season, he averaged 22 points per game and became an All-Star. In 2017, he averaged 29 points per game, which was the 3rd best mark in the entire league. He made second
This was
team
around the time I
All-NBA,
was watching
becoming
properly.
the shortest player with an All-NBA selection, the shortest with multiple All-Star selections, and the shortest player to record a triple-double. Then, in the 2017 playoffs against the Wizards, he scored 53 points on his late sister's birthday, just a few weeks after she passed away.
Tough.
Unfortunately for IT, during the same playoffs, he would severely injure his hip, which derailed his mobility, and he was never the same player again. Still, he remains the best little guy to ever play, and he squeezed every bit of juice out of his 5'9"
What a guy.
body, which is, ironically, smaller than this next Hall of Famer.
I mean, it says a lot about a guy's talent and skill. If he can make it into the NBA being 5'9", that just tells you everything you need to know about a guy's skill level.
Who is best known by his nickname, Tiny. At 6'1" and just 150 pounds, Nate Archibald was one of the lightest
150
players in
pounds.
NBA history. He was drafted with the 19th overall pick in the 1970 NBA draft, which qualifies him for this list because there were only 17 teams in
Okay,
the NBA.
I was gonna call
back
that out
then.
then.
And even though he came in a stacked draft that produced 6 Hall of Famers, Nate quickly proved that he should have been picked much higher. Thanks to his featherweight, Nate was extremely quick, shifty, and unstoppable when driving to
Nate,
the
the
basket.
weight
In his second
was-
NBA season, Archibald averaged 28 points per game, and in his 3rd year, he averaged 34 points and 11 assists, both of which were best marks in the NBA. To this day, Tiny is the only player in NBA history to lead the league in points and assists in the same season. Archibald averaged 25 points and 8 assists per game in his first 7 seasons before he injured his Achilles. Still, even after injury, he was productive, making 3 All-Star teams and winning a title with the Celtics. But just when
This guy didn't look that skinny then. I was expecting skinny. 150 pounds is very light for someone 6'1", and he looked like he had a bit of muscle
the
mass to him.
Celtics title runs in the 80s were coming to an end, a new trend in the NBA emerged. NBA GMs finally started realizing that European players weren't half bad, especially after Team USA failed to win gold at the '88 Olympics and the 1990 World Cup. But don't get
not
us
good
wrong,
enough.
the NBA was still biased.
Look at those
towards
shorts,
Europeans,
man.
And that's why players like Drazen Petrovic and Tony Kukoc were late draft picks, despite dominating European basketball for years. Petrovic is still the 4th most accurate three-point shooter ever, and Kukoc was best known as a member of the Chicago Bulls during their second three-peat. Kukoc was one of the first big men that could dribble, pass, and shoot. He was a hybrid between Dirk Nowitzki and Manu Ginobili. If he didn't play alongside Jordan and
a
Pippen,
good
Tony
hybrid to
could have
be.
been an all-star and easily averaged over 20 points per game. Another great player from that Bulls team that was a late draft pick was Steve Kerr, the 50th pick
I
in the
never knew that.
1988 NBA draft. But it's understandable why Steve dropped so low. Kerr was a skinny, unathletic white guy who only had one real skill, shooting. But the problem was that the NBA didn't value three-pointers in the 80s as much as it does today. But Kerr turned out to be the most accurate three-point shooter in NBA history.
Steve Kerr came into this season at 48% career.
And now he manages the best three-point shooter ever.
And was an invaluable role player for 5 championship teams with unforgettable clutch shots.
Here's Jordan. Did not have the shot.
You know you're good when Jordan's handing it
Funny
off to you.
championship speeches.
When we called timeout, Phil told Michael, he said, Michael, I want you to take the last shot. And Michael said, you know, Phil, I don't feel real comfortable in these situations. Maybe we ought to go in another direction. Why don't we go to Steve?
The Bulls
Sure
general
he did.
manager Jerry Krause once said that it's the whole organization that wins championships, and not just their superstars. Jordan and Pippen hated Krause, but it's undeniable that he was correct. The most pivotal of all the Bulls additions turned out to be Dennis Rodman, who, despite his craziness, was a hell of a player. Rodman had one of the most unusual
This was my what was it called, the last dance. that documentary, because I didn't know much about that team. Obviously, I knew about Jordan. I'd heard about Pippen, but I didn't know much about it. It was way before my time and way before I was watching basketball. But learning about Dennis Rodman was the most fun part of that documentary for sure.
Paths to the NBA. He was homeless for 2 years after high school and worked as a janitor at an airport to support himself. In his last attempt at basketball, he attended a junior college in Oklahoma, where he averaged 25 points and 15 rebounds. And that was enough to get
The rebounds
invited
are
to a
insane.
pre-draft camp for NBA prospects, where he caught the attention of the Pistons scouts and changed his life forever. Not many believed that a 25-year-old Rodman, who only played in junior college, was worth spending a pick on, but the Pistons did, and so they snagged him with the 27th pick of the 1986 draft. And Rodman would become an integral part of the bad boy era and win 2 NBA championships with Detroit, and then 3 more as a member of the Chicago Bulls.
Not bad.
And do you know which player scored the most points in the 80s? Many people would probably guess Jordan, Bird, Magic, or Dominique Wilkins.
Who was
but
it?
They'd all be wrong. It's actually Alex English.
And he was
Okay.
selected with the 6th pick of the second round in 1976. Honorable mention goes to Dennis Johnson, another
Alex English. I don't even think I've ever heard that name before. My knowledge isn't the best, but I know quite a lot of the old players. I never heard of him.
Hall of Famer selected in the same draft 6 spots after English. But unlike Johnson, who quickly found his footing, English spent the first 3 seasons riding the bench. It wasn't until he got traded to Denver that he got his first real opportunity, which he used to the fullest. Not only did English average 25 points per game in the entire decade, but he was also
Jesus.
Mr. Reliable, missing only 7 games for the Nuggets during his 11-year tenure in Colorado. English led the
He's taking notes, guys. He's taking notes. These superstars these days need to be watching this video.
NBA in scoring once. He was an 8-time All-Star, retired with over 25,000 points, and is the lowest draft pick out of all the players who scored 25,000 or more. But scoring isn't everything, and you can get into the Hall of Fame by averaging a triple single.
He had a triple single.
We're talking about Draymond Green.
Okay.
Draymond was an exceptional college player. As a sophomore, Green was the conference 6th man of the year. And as a senior, he carried the Spartans to the #1 seed in the conference as their leading scorer, rebounder,
My man
and
was
three-point
30 in
shooter.
college.
NCAA coaches selected Draymond as Collegiate Player of the Year. He made the Big Ten All-Defensive Team, and he was a consensus first-team All-American. With that kind of resume, Draymond believed he was going to be a lottery pick, but instead, he dropped all the way to the 35th pick, where he was finally selected by the Warriors.
Good pick for them in the end. Not so much now, but he's had a great career,
In
man.
hindsight, Draymond was a top 5 player in a draft that also included Anthony Davis, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, and Chris Middleton.
You know,
Oh,
Middleton also did
that'd be an interesting one to redraft now. That's a very strong draft class, but also kind of tough to choose between
deserves
them.
an honorable mention because he was selected 4 spots after Draymond with the 39th overall pick. But during that time, there were a lot of questions about Green, and very few people could have predicted his success. In 2012, NBA teams still played with 2 traditional big men, and Draymond was a 6'7" power forward. Along with his
tweener.
lack of height, he was also a bit overweight, and being short and chubby, that was never a good combination in the
Being short and chubby. My man's 6'7". I know what it means in the context of being a power forward, but you can never describe someone 6'7" as short. Come on now.
Green checked off a few of the common biases when evaluating talent. He was a tweener with no clear position. He was already 22 years old, and some scouts believed he maxed out. And he was a jack of all trades, but master of none. Of course, they were all wrong, and Draymond improved significantly.
Draymond
He made
plays on pure
7
heart as well,
all-defensive
man.
NBA teams and became a Defensive Player of the Year, along with 4 All-Star nods and 4 championships. To this day, he still holds a grudge about his draft position, and he knows the name of every single player drafted ahead of him.
11 was Myers Leonard. 12 was
So he
Sherman Lamb.
knows.
And just like Draymond, this late second-round pick also became a Defensive Player of the Year. It was Marc Gasol,
Okay.
who first came to America as a 16-year-old.
Spanish.
After his brother Pau got drafted as the 3rd overall pick in the 2001 NBA draft.
The Atlanta Hawks select Pau Gasol from FC Barcelona, Spain.
The Gasol family moved
Barcelona.
to Memphis, and young Mark didn't know the language at all, and it was hard for him
Yo,
to
is that him? Bloody hell. Yo, he was chubby. Bloody hell. Look
get
at him.
acclimated to America. But what he did like was food. especially American fast food
Bet he did.
restaurants. Nicknamed Big Burrito, younger Gasol ballooned up and didn't receive any substantial NCAA offers. However,
Big
with
Burrito.
some help from Pau, who lobbied for him, Mark returned to Spain in 2003 to extend his basketball career. 4 years later, and dozens of pounds less, Mark entered his name in the draft, but he was still considered too slow and too unfit, which is why he fell all the way to the Lakers with the 48th pick. And fate would have it that Mark got traded for his brother and ended up in Memphis while Powell moved to LA. And that brotherly swap was one of the best
I'd never do
win-win
that.
trades in NBA history. The Lakers won 2 titles with Powell, while Mark ended up with 3 All-Star selections, a Defensive Player of the Year award, and a championship with the Raptors.
Worked
But
out
a
for
few years
everyone.
prior to the Gasols arriving in America, another Spanish-speaking basketball magician quietly joined the NBA, and nobody knew how to pronounce his name.
Ginobili.
Emmanuel Ginobili.
Ginobili threw me off because it said Spanish speaking, but he's Argentinian, right?
Who did we just pick? I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna be great. He's this. He's okay, Pop. Whatever. Yeah, okay.
It wouldn't take too long before he
What a team that was, man. Ginobili, Tim Duncan, Parker.
took the league by storm and
Tony.
made Charles Barkley scream his name with absolute delight. Menu was the 57th pick in the talent-rich 99 NBA draft.
Antonio Spurs select Emmanuel Ginobili from Argentina.
Ginobili.
9 All-Stars, 8 of which were selected in the first round. But the one who got picked near the end turned out to be the best of them all, and the only one who got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Ginobili became a legend in San Antonio, winning 4 titles and firmly establishing
they are,
himself
look at
as
him.
one of the best foreign players to ever play in the NBA. But the player who still has a chance to be the best foreigner in the
Jokic.
NBA was so neglected during his draft selection that nobody even saw him get drafted. By the time Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum was saying his name, some ESPN producer decided it was time to skip to commercials, probably thinking that nobody cared about the 41st pick anyway. While the world watched a Taco Bell commercial, the Denver Nuggets
That's
selected
crazy,
the best
man.
passing big man in NBA history. During that time, Nikola Jokic was still quite chubby and sound asleep in Serbia. Not even he could foresee that he would be the best player in his draft class and win multiple MVPs.
Jokic is just another sort of character,
And
man.
that's not too shabby for a guy less important than Taco Bell.
There we go. This was a really good video by Nonstop YouTube channel. Go and check it out in the description. Really enjoyed it. Some of them I was aware of. I kind of knew Jokic's and Ginobili. I think I'd heard before that he was like a round 2. Steve Kerr surprised me. I didn't realize he went so low, but I can kind of see why. Draymond Green, I kind of get it. Like it said, he wasn't a master of anything, but he was like a jack of all trades. This English dude, honestly, I don't think that name's ever crossed my path. Isaiah Thomas, I can kind of understand that one as well because he was so short, and he's just like an outlier there in the NBA. But really good video, really enjoyed it. You guys let me know which one you think is the best out of all these second round picks, or is there anyone you think was missing from this list? I'm sure Nonstop probably picked up on all of them. But I'll see you for the next video, guys. Take it easy. Peace.